Hi, my name is Julie. I was born into the Christian Science religion/church, and after 40 years I went my own way, and that brought me back to a deeper love of the teachings of Mary Baker Eddy, which form the basis of the church and the religion, but are not the church and the religion of today, and nothing like it. It's just such peace right now. I'm hearing like great peace have they who love thy law, and nothing shall offend. I don't know what I'm supposed to talk about today. I never do. A few ideas came to my thought as I was driving here today. The teaching of Christian Science is an interesting thing because when the truth dawned on Mary Baker Eddy that we actually live in a spiritual world and we are spirit, not matter, and that what we see as the material universe is just a reflection of our thoughts. So when she discovered that fact, that the material world is a manifestation of our thoughts and or a reflection of our thoughts, that where we are in our growth spiritward, we would see that, and we would see our thoughts. I kind of like to think about it as preschool for spiritual beings. Like, we're all spiritual beings. We're all one. But the most important fact that our substance is spirit and not matter. But I don't know, the way I've kind of heard to see it is as preschool, and that in this maybe school, she calls it Earth's preparatory school. In this school, because we're spiritual beings, it means that our thoughts, our state of mind, are the only thing that's important, because our whole experience as spiritual beings is going on in what Miss Eddy calls the divine mind, or you could just call it mind. It's going on in mind, not brain. Like a far greater mind, an all-knowing, all-seeing, all-acting, all-wise mind. And if you think of it as a preschool for spiritual beings, and the spiritual beings wondering why is everything so disharmonious in my existence, and why am I alone? Why am I angry? Why am I this? Why am I that? I don't know. If it's in this realm of thought, in this preparatory school, we get a chance to see our thoughts. And as you graduate upwards and upwards, you will see less. You will have control over whether you see or not, you see your thoughts or not. But here we don't have control. We see our thoughts. But right now, we don't have control over whether we see our thoughts or not. So that's why we're seeing a material universe. That's why we're seeing matter. But it's not substantial. It's a reflection or a manifestation, and there's a million words that you can use for it. As long as you understand the concept, it doesn't matter what words you use. Do you understand so go for the concept. Don't worry about the words. That what I see as the fence behind me, the sand and the water it's not just a manifestation or reflection of my thoughts currently, but the collective. So the collective mankind, all of us together we're all in this together as one, and we're seeing our thoughts from infinite perspectives. Each of us kind of seems to represent one perspective or one perspective of that thought. You could say we're all one, and we're seeing our infinite array of thoughts in infinite ways. So like when you touch something, it's actually spirit. And when you get to a certain level, you won't touch it and feel it's substantial. You'll be aware of its unsubstantiality. That spirit is the only thing that's substantial. And spirit is the invisible being or presence behind everything in the universe. And it is an intelligent force, but it is pure love too. I mean, in the synonyms, Mrs. Eddy's, gives the synonyms for God. All of those synonyms really describe our nature and the nature of existence. It's principle, meaning it does have principles. There is a structure that upholds it. It's not a material structure. It's a structure beyond form and words. Mind, soul. Soul is our identity, our being as spirit. Principles, mind, soul, spirit, life. That means we exist. These qualities define us. We exist. Truth. It means it is the truth of our being. These synonyms define our reality. Our reality is truth. Love. In Christian Science, in the beginning, when you first join the church, you're taught that God is Christian Science is a course correction for Christianity. So Christians think that God is a person or a being. Christian Science was the course correction saying, no, God is not a person, not a man in the sky, not a being. It is It is the I am of all existence, our I am. It is the truth of who we are. God is the descriptor word to define all that is. So when we are learning that, when we first come to Christian Science, we still see God as a being out there, separate from us, and that we're taught that we're God's reflection. So if God were to look in a mirror, God would see us, and that's the baby steps we teach someone when they are first getting their first course correction, either course correction of Christianity or their course correction just when they're first. I was born into it, so I didn't need a course correction for Christianity. And for those of us who are born into it, It's just the first things we learn. And the key is to, like, all the teachings point to God being all powerful, the only power, the only presence, and that is like what's really important to start, to learn, is that there's nothing in existence other than what we define as God, or all that is, the great I am. So all these teachings, they kind of start leading us to these higher truths, but we don't start there. I think the Christian Science movement is stuck there. For some reason, I think the teachers don't think they're not allowed to teach us, or not allowed to even let us think that, they only say you and God are one, not two. But they're not coming out and telling us, well, when you're conscious and you're consciously aware of truth, that's what God is. God is being. You are God being. You are being. And you are God is like, we don't want to really use it, because in this universe right now, you could get killed for saying I am God. There's a lot of spiritual teachings out there now that understand that, and I guess a lot of teachings over the existence, maybe the Gnostics, I don't know, that understood it. But when you really understand that statement in its fullness, you don't really ever want to go around saying, I am God, because people are going to misinterpret that you think you're the guy in the sky, or you think you're almighty and everyone else is peons, or they call, blasphemous. Certain religions are going to kill you. They physically will kill you if you say that. So the teachers of today really skirt around that, even though that's the core teaching. Your true identity is the core teaching, like your true identity as the great I am, and not the lower I am. And see, that's what all the questions about, well, if God is love and God is principle, why is there war, and why is there famine, and why is there illness and hate and fear? So many happy birds today. There's an element of it that we have to understand, that is that at one point in our existence as spiritual beings, we had the Course calls it the Course in Miracles calls it a tiny mad idea. So the Course in Miracles says there was a tiny mad idea. And my understanding of that coincides with Christian Science, where there was a momentary belief of separation. Like, we're looking at the images of our thought, and for a moment we thought we were the images, instead of being the soul behind the image, is the one that's thinking these things and seeing them in their own mind and thought. For a moment we thought, oh, that's me, that's my identity, that body is me, and that body is you. And that is what we call separation, the belief that we are separate from God, or separate from, that there's two creations, God and man. Principle, but Christian Science, says that what there really is principle and idea. The principle of the universe and the idea of that principle. that idea is what we see right now. We're currently seeing the ideas or the thoughts. It's important not to worry as much about terminology as the concepts. The concepts, if understood correctly, will be all powerful. If you get stuck on words, then you get stuck in religion, church, you get stuck in dogma, in teachings. This teacher says use this word, this teacher says use this word, this religion defines it this way and that way, and so get the concept and not worry about the words. So that's what seems to happen is we seem to be in an identity crisis where we're thinking we're that body, that this is me, this body, but really it's not me. It is my thoughts that I can see, that you can see, that we can all see. My thoughts about myself, I guess, my thoughts about reality, and collectively, our collective thought together is creating this, what we see as Earth, what we see as our universe. And so the teachings of Christian Science were brought to Mary Baker Eddy was the one that was to bring these teachings, that the specific area of existence is this. These are her teachings. This is what she was to teach, that what is really going on, how we fell. The Adam and Eve story is just an allegory, but it's symbolic of we fell. We believed the serpent instead of the mind that was our mind. And so we got off course. And what happens is it's an instantaneous thought and correction at the same time. The Course is really good at, Course in Miracles is really good at explaining how the correction occurs at the same time, meaning we're not going to spend an eternity believing or having this identity crisis. It's only in time, the belief of linear time and the belief of linear space, right, where we are right now in our development, where we experience this separation, this belief of separation, this belief of a separate identity. But so it's not anything that affects us at the level of soul or at the level of spirit, who we really are. It only affects our experience here in linear time. But we do, now that we fell hook, line, and sinker for the error, we drank the Kool-Aid, whatever you want. My bad. It's done, and now the way to get back is there has to be a course correction. We're believing it, everything in our existence, we seem to be believing at some level. When we're ill, we seem to be believing the body is ill because we see it in the body. We see all the illnesses, and we call them physical illnesses, but all illness is really mental illness. All illness is some course correction of thought that's needed, and needed collectively, needed individually, needed a combination of both in some varying degree. So it's all, you can call it the effect of a thought that's out of alignment with what really is. What really is. And if you are thinking, it's kind of like saying, I'm drawing a picture with red and green and blue and all these different colors, and it's a tree with some flowers and a lake, kind of like this. And then someone comes along and says, you know, that tree is actually not a tree, it's a stone. And that stone is like evil. And that stone actually should be orange, not green or whatever color we made it. And you're like, but this is my picture, and this is like, you're coming to me and saying no, that you're wrong, but it's the picture I created, and so it follows my rules. Well, I don't, what is what is true. And so we do have to bring our thought back in alignment with truth. And we don't do it on our own anymore because of this mistaken assumption that we're separate. We seem to be living life mesmerized. It's the mesmerized self, the lower self, the small I, whatever you want to call it, and whatever works for you. Just know that that little self is mesmerized to believe what you see is what you get. What you see is real, that it's cause. Like, if you're looking at illness, you're saying, well, maybe look at cancer. The cause of cancer is another. It's X, Y, and Z in the body, and X, Y, and Z in the environment, and maybe these chemicals, or maybe this radiation, or maybe I don't know what all the beliefs are about the causes of cancer. I think there are many, legion. When in fact the cause is mental illness, and not like we first learned that as Christian Zionists, that all causes occurring like in mortal mind, which is the small I, the I in matter. And you think, oh, I'm creating cancer, I'm making up cancer, like I all of a sudden decided I'm going to have cancer, or I wanted attention, so I am going to do cancer. Like, and you do have like a large percentage of the Christian Science church religion. I call them church Christian Scientists. Mrs. Eddy called them church Christian Scientists. They're the ones that are believing in a church and a religion, but not. They don't want the higher teachings. They don't want the silver bullet that wakes us up from life and matter. They're stuck in the matrix. They're happy in the matrix, and their church and their religion of Christian Science is part of that matrix, and they don't want anything other than that. And there's some that are stuck within it that do want more than that, but then they're being mesmerized by all the others who just want that. But it's not that. It is that he figured out this like amazing truth. This figured out what we were doing wrong and figured out the silver bullet of how to get out of it. I would much rather have that than a religion and a church. And I think that's why I was so unhappy in the Christian Science church, is in my heart I knew there was something more, but everyone else was, or most others were, they were giving me rules and themselves rules about what it means to be a Christian Zionist. And it was all about behavioral characteristics, like smiling and being happy, and not going to doctors, or not taking medicine, or going to church every Sunday. And the list goes on and 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 on, and of what they want. They were trying to tell the rest of us what. And I was I was asleep for a while too, since I was born into it. You can't really escape that, and you don't really have any way of getting that. You don't know it's so superficial for a while until your heart just is like, I can't can't reconcile this with these teachings that I'm learning so much about. But the cause is not that you want to be sick, or not that you read a medical book and now you know about cancer and so now you're going to have cancer, or you actually went to a doctor and got diagnosed so now you have cancer. That's not how it works. That's kind of like there's a lot of guilt in the church and religion where the reliable religionists or the church Christian Scientists, they truly believe, or want you to believe, that that's what illness is, that you're thinking it, and so stop thinking it, or you shouldn't have read that medical book, or you shouldn't have watched that medical show, or you shouldn't have gone to a doctor and had it diagnosed, and it's all in your mind. I mean, that's what you hear all the time. It's all in your mind, and you call a practitioner when you're ill, and it's in your mind. And so you just grow up thinking, I cause and create illness by thinking it, and you try so hard to not think it, not talk about it. We get out of classes, we get religious exemptions from biology and classes where they talk about disease and stuff, which it's not a bad thing. But we think that that's where it's at, and well, I used to think that way too. But really, what you see, anything discordant, disease, war, homelessness, depression, it's all a result. The only cause is that we seem to think we're separate from who we really are. We seem to be a divided self. A kingdom divided cannot stand. And that's the truth. And that's why we experience all these just terrible things in this world. Horrible, horrible, horrible things. It's all individually and collectively we fell into a belief that is just a belief and it's not real. And then the question is how do we, and all this is the effect of that. Suffering is the effect of that. And there's so much guilt in the church of Christian Science, in the religion. But it's nothing to feel guilty about. It's okay. Fine, we fell, mistaken identity. Now I want to get back. What do I do? Well, people like my primary class teacher will tell you things like sit and feel spiritual, like sit and be really still and feel yourself as spiritual. And spiritual. Don't think about anything bad, only think about good. Love God supremely, that'll do it. There's all these positive affirmations, and that the reliable religionists are trying to tell us, the people that are still mesmerized. It's like all the people who drank the Kool-Aid. I mean, they're sitting there saying, this is how you get out of it. But the only ones that you want to listen to are the ones that have become aware of what happened, and that they know something needs to occur to shift them back to their oneness or their true identity. And there's very few in the Christian Science church that understand this concept. If there were more, the world would be different today. This way of thinking, it changes everything. Because we are collectively one, to have individuals within that collectiveness or understanding the truth and then working their way out of what seemed to have occurred, it sends shockwaves throughout the entire collective. The entire universe is benefited by it. It is extremely powerful to have even one Mrs. Eddy at her time. She was it. She was the one that got it. The only one in the earth dream at that time that understood this exact concept, that who we really are, what happened, and what it takes to wake up, that we're stuck in a mesmeric state, and what it takes to get out of that state. Because we're only conscious at this point, seemingly, of this mesmeric state. And so to actually be able to come out of that mesmeric state, be the first one to do it, and the only one at that time to do it. And then she laid the axe at the root, like the root of of the whole matrix. She was shown it. She was brought here for this purpose, and she did her job. But she was the only one here, and how powerful it was. Like, it changed the trajectory of our world at that time. 1875, the 1800s, 1860s when she discovered it, and the trajectory of the world is so different now than it would have been just from one. And to think if there were more than one, how different it would be. I know that there's not very many there's not very many that get it when we're suffering as a world with so much war, so much hunger, so much illness, depression, anxiety, loneliness, poverty, everything, all that stuff. And all it took was Mrs. Eddy passing away and people thinking they knew what she was teaching. And, okay, we can take it from here. In fact, we wanted to take it from you people wanted to take it from her a long time. They would try to. The mesmerized self is so manipulated by its own errors and the errors of the collective that we call those errors evil. We call the mesmerism evil. That's the only thing evil is this collective state of mesmerism that's always trying to survive. It only knows how to just survive and keep the status quo, which is separation. It doesn't know any better. So, like, people wanted to take over for her. The next friend suit, and people wanted to be her successor. They wanted to be the teacher that taught the Norma class. They wanted to take over. We can do it. And they thought that so many of them thought that she didn't know what she was doing. Like, it was even Kimball, one of her best students, who taught his students that Mrs. Eddy talks too much about error. And even my primary class teacher made many corrections during our class about things that Mrs. Eddy even wrote in Science and Health, and how no, that's not correct. And he said, feel love for Mrs. Eddy. She was trying. He said, give her a break. She was trying. That's what he actually told us, that give her a break. She was trying. So he was one of them. Kimball was one of them. And there were many, many who thought, the one being able to break the mesmerism and then start teaching others to break the mesmerism. Some of the highest people in the church believe she was wrong. And that's why they won't release, I believe that's why the church won't release a lot of her stuff. Our teacher, my primary class teacher, called it voodoo mumbo jumbo. And he thought that she thought too much of error too. And he thought that error was this evil entity and influence that we had to be constantly alert to. Yes, she did. Because we gave it an existence with the force of our belief. We are these powerful beings. We are infinite, eternal. We are omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. We are. How could we not be? Even in Christian Science, we're taught that's what God is, and we're the God's reflection. Even the church scientists teach that. Then aren't you all of that too? How can a reflection be less than? It can't be. I remember when that struck me that, oh, we are all powerful, all knowing, all seeing, all acting, all wise. Because the reflection can't be anything other than what the original is. So it's interesting when you see people who have diverged from Christian Science. You know, they were led astray. I think the mesmerism works the hardest. It is an intelligent force because it has the reflection of our intelligent being, but it's working on the wrong side. It's working for the wrong. I'm gonna have to get my car. I'm cold. Mortal mind is working 24/7. We call it mortal mind, the mesmerized state, the mesmerized self, the ego, human egotism, the small ego. It's working overtime to defend itself, to protect itself, and to exist. That's all it knows how to do. So the mesmerism doesn't sleep. The mesmerized state of being and the collective that's mesmerized doesn't sleep. There is one mesmerized collective because there was one true self, which we are all one with and we are all part of. We are all one collectively. But then there is a collective mesmerized state too. And so it's a very strong, it's strong, seemingly, because in the end is mesmerism. Is it true? No. Because there is, whatever is true, and the only thing true is our true nature as soul, a spirit, in an unmesmerized state. So it's not true, it can't be, but it sure thinks it is, and we've been convinced. The problem is we've been convinced it is. We've given it the weight of our power, the weight of our thought. And if people in the church scientists knew that, things would be different. If the CSBs knew that, our world would be different. If the board of directors knew that, our world would be different. Because they would be what Mrs. Eddy always taught was that you have to know evil right. You have to know error right. You have to know how it operates and how it seems to exist. And that you always have to be watching for it. Jesus wouldn't have told us to watch, and Mrs. Eddy, I don't know if I can get this to work right. And Mrs. Eddy wouldn't have been told us to watch if we didn't need to watch. Watch what we were thinking, watch our thought. It's kind of crazy when you look at it and think, Yep, that's what happened. So a church filled with people who know that and understand it would be the most powerful thing in the universe, especially given the numbers of so-called Christian Scientists. Our world would be already different. But we're up against such a powerful force, seeming force, that we created in our error, and we shouldn't feel guilty about it. It was not real. We created it in thinking that we were separate from it, but never were. So it really can't be real, but it seems really real to us. A friend of mine was high up in the church, and he was supposed to meet one of the board of directors. They were both flying in to Chicago, I think it was, and they were going to have a meeting, and I think it was an important meeting, and my friend had these awakening moments and had these revelations that were shown to him what happened and what happened to the movement, what happened to us, what happened to the movement. And it was an alignment. He was brought back into alignment with Mrs. Eddy's teachings, original teachings, and why she said the things she said and why that she did the things she did. And so he was always on alert, just listening and just knowing, there's an alertness that comes with that. And it's an unwinding process. We are each going to be unwound from our false identity by our soul, by God, not by ourselves. We can't do it because we're in a mesmerized state. It's like giving the criminals the keys to the jail and telling them to rehabilitate themselves and then leave when they're ready. We're working from within the dream, and so from within the dream, it doesn't work. So you're looking to someone that's not in the dream, and that's God or soul or spirit. It is our true being that's outside of the dream. So we have to look to that true being, and every moment of our lives is meant, if we learn to turn, like my friend taught me, turn to God without reservation and do exactly what he says. Those words are words of separation, but they're for the person who's just starting to realize that they want to wake up. So the first teaching is turn to God for everything, because within the dream, you don't know what's up, and you think you know what's up and down and left and right, what's true and not true, but you don't. Only God does. Only the soul does. And so the first teachings I learned were turn to God without reservation and do exactly what he says, even if it's contrary to everything that this material world is telling you. Do it, because it's outside the dream, and it can guide you out. It's like God is outside the dream, outside the labyrinth, and you can only be brought out of it by listening to God and doing exactly what God says. And it's like, sometimes you're like, why? I wonder, why was I led to do this? Why this, why that? And then over time, or sometimes even sooner than that, you're like, oh, wow, I would never have done that this way. I would never have thought that. I was totally believing this, and I was totally believing, I had no idea. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful when it starts happening more and more and more, and you start being able to listen. I think 90% of the battle is learning how to listen And it takes some trial and error, and you're being taught how to listen, you're being taught all this, but it seems contrary. It seems so contrary. Like leaving the Church of Christian Science seems so contrary to what someone who loves the teachings of Mary Baker Eddy would do. But I was led to leave. My friend was led to leave. So many of us were led to leave at different times and in different ways. It was difficult, to say the least, to really come to that where, okay, I'm going to listen and I'm going to follow. But so we're all, Soul is at the helm and giving us all to look at it in separation, as Soul is providing us every minute what we need to break the mesmerism, to come out of it. And so we listen, we learn. We just learn to listen and follow. That song, Take My Life and Let It Be Consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my moments. It's a hymn, now. But he was meeting this board member, and he was having to listen because there was all this, I don't know, it seems when things are really important, it's like the mesmerized state is kicking up a fight, and it's like more active than like two people high up in the church meeting to discuss important things. The mesmerized state is more active, is more like a heightened state of alertness. And so sometimes it seems to be that we need to be more alert during those times. And this person wound up, my friend was a really busy teacher at the time, had a very busy practice. He was, and this board member was like a couple hours late and had gotten lost, and like it was all kinds of stuff, gone to the wrong place. I can't remember. It was, and my friend was like, oh, mortal mind, animal magnetism. And the board member was like, oh, poo-poo. He didn't believe it, that he took an extra 2 hours out of this busy teacher / healer's time. And then he was like, it's not, animal magnetism's not real. It's not. And he poo-pooed the whole concept. There seems to be like this reaction, like there was a certain period of time when in the movement, they were taught to be more alert to mesmerism and animal magnetism and malpractice. But other people came along and said, you spend too much time thinking about animal magnetism. I think the reason we're not healing and the reason we're not growing is because we spend too much time talking about malpractice and animal magnetism. You've made it a god, you've made it a power, you've made it a force, and so let's not do that anymore. I mean, the mesmerized state is like it's like throwing all kinds of stuff against the wall, hoping some of it will stick. So I think maybe at some point we made too much of it, then at some point we made too little of it. We're in the state right now where we're still making too little of it. And there's an article where she talks about making too little or too much of sin, which is what this is. Sin is another word for this state of separation. I like to, I think of sin as the scientific statement of being in negation, S-I-N. It just means believing in the opposite of the scientific statement of being. Okay, I moved inside and it got noisy, and then So here I am later in the evening. The article where she talks about thinking too much or too little of sin is I consider one of the most important articles for Christian Scientists today and probably ever. And it's the one I think least looked at. I brought it up to my original primary class teacher, and he like poo-pooed it, like, oh, that article was written for something totally different. It's not even related to, it was like, ignore. So, extract from my first address in the Mother Church, May 26, 1895, Miscellaneous Writings, page 108, starts on line 15. And this was after they had built the massive second Mother Church, where she had had the original little Mother Church that is still standing today, but then they added to it because Christian Science had become so popular, and they had so much of a desire to, and the need for more space and to show it off. And this address is really serious on a day when I think everyone expected her to be like, oh, yay, we've got this great cause and it's going across the world. And, she didn't. Why? Because she knows what we're talking about. She taught what we're talking about today. And she's like animal magnetism at every door. The citation that's coming to me. Let me look it up. I had to remember the right word and how to spell it right to look it up. Traitors to the right of them, MDs to the left of them, priestcraft in front of them, volleyed and thunder into the jaws of hate, out through the door of love, on to the blessed above, march the 100. Oh, that's interesting that I didn't even know that is right before this article. Holy moly. The article before is what? Science and the Senses. Wow. And it ends with that. Traitors to the right of them, MDs to the left of them, priestcraft in front of them, volleyed in thunder, into the jaws of hate, out through the door of love, onto the blessed above, march the 100. Anyways, this is like the article that I studied the most when I was waking up. And it's where she talks about, the pathway out of the belief of moral existence. And it's a 3-step process: a proper sense of sin, repentance, and an understanding of good. Down page 108, like line, it starts on page 107, the last line. Mankind thinks either too much or too little of sin. The sensitive, sorrowing saint thinks too much of it. The sordid sinner, or the so-called Christian asleep, thinks too little of sin. And I think that's where you can firmly place the Christian Science church of today, is the so-called Christian asleep. Because they know little or nothing about what we've been talking about today, which is Mrs. Eddy's original teachings. So at some point, we went from, okay, everyone, we're thinking too much of it and it's halting our progress. Okay, and then now someone's got to say, hey, we're thinking too little of it, and that's halting our progress. not in the same article, is every statement confirms this. Not to know that a false claim is false is to be in danger of believing it. Hence the utility of knowing evil aright, then reducing its claim to its proper denominator, nobody and nothing. You have to know evil aright. You can't see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, like the Christian Science Church of today does. It's just not going to work. Evil loves that. And the mesmerized state loves a state of anonymity. It loves to be able to do what it needs to do behind the scenes and nobody knows. It's pulling the strings. It's the puppet master. And as long as you don't disturb its nest, it's a nest of serpents, then you're fine. You're golden. You're going to make money. You're going to be very popular. Like my primary class teacher is very popular, has a huge following, very well off, very, very well off. And that's because he does not disturb the serpent's nest. This unwinding process that we each must go through, everyone in the universe, well, in the universe of mortal mind, of the mesmerized state, the mesmerized self, has to go through this unwinding process, untangling our snarls. She's in the same article, she states the first state, namely the knowledge of oneself, the proper knowledge of evil and its subtle workings, where evil seems as real as good, is indispensable, since that which is truly conceived of we can handle. But the misconception of what we need to know of evil, or the conception of it at all as something real, costs much. Sin needs only to be known for what it is not. Then we are its... Sin only needs to be known for what it is not. Then we are its master, not servant. Remember and act on Jesus' definition of sin as a lie. This cognomen makes it less dangerous, for most of us would not be seen believing in or adhering to that which we know to be untrue. And then down on line 8, examine yourselves and see what and how much sin claims of you. It claims us, and how much of this claim you admit as valid or comply with. The knowledge of evil that brings on repentance is the most hopeful stage of mortal mentality. Ignorance is only blessed by reason of its nothingness. Ignorance was the first condition of sin in the Garden of Eden. I lost it. In the allegory of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, their mental state is not desirable. So there is a process of unwinding our snarls, getting out of this rat's nest of, we're wound in tight. Believe me, we're all wound in tight to the mesmerized state, because the mesmerism has just grown and grown and grown. And how we unwind from that is totally a divine activity. And we have to allow it to happen and ask for it to happen and be willing and open for what comes up. Like in Science and Health, in Genesis, page 542, starting on line 19, let truth uncover and destroy error in God's own way, and let human justice patter than divine. So it's not something we can do from within the mesmerized self. It has to be done from outside the mesmerism, which is where God comes into play, and because our divine selfhood comes into play. It requires a tremendous amount of humility to open up and allow for this self-examination to take place. Arrogance is the Antichrist. It is, the stubborn belief that we are the personality, that the dream is real, that the illusion is real. It is like confirmation and a momentary, minute by minute lifetime. It's just a confirmation each minute, like self-perpetuating the dream of life and matter. And so the only way to go about it, she says, is to humility, to pray for humility. And arrogance is something everyone has. And if you think you don't have it, then think again. My arrogance was really strong, low self-esteem for most of my life. I call self-esteem arrogance, I call it reverse arrogance, because, but really, I don't know if that's the way I describe it. I don't know if that's even the right descriptor, but you think of arrogance, if you're looking at what's happened to us, where we think we're something we're not. Arrogance is this desire to stay, fixed in this personality, and it's a strong reinforcement of a self separate from God. Reverse arrogance or low self-esteem, that type of arrogance is still a strong reinforced belief that we are that personality. That personality just so happens to be not as good as other personalities. In like the other kind of arrogance, that personality knows more than other personalities, better than other personalities, prettier, more handsome, smarter, richer, better genes, better everything. The other side of it is not as good as other personalities in every single one of those ways. And it's all arrogance because it's all still the belief of being the personality rather than the soul. And the only way out of arrogance is to pray for humility. And when you begin to ask for humility, you will be given circumstances and situations, experiences where you recognize, oh, I do not have utility and humility in this situation. And all the areas where you're not humble or where you're stuck in that perpetuating belief of a separate identity from the whole, from God, they will come to light. They will surface all of those areas, and you have to you're praying and you're letting. So the self-examination is really an allowing of truth to uncover these errors that you're stuck in for. Praying that you can listen and you can follow. Practicing listening, practicing following. Making mistakes, going the wrong way, coming back, Okay, starting again. Okay, let me try and listen again. Let me try and follow. Mrs. Eddy's poem, Feed My Sheep, is all about that. Shepherds show me how to go o'er the hillside steep, how to gather, how to sow, how to feed thy sheep. I will listen for thy voice, lest my footsteps stray. I will follow and rejoice all the rugged way. And then thou wilt bind the stubborn will. Human will, arrogance, human egotism. Thou wilt bind the stubborn will. God does it, not us. Wound the callous breast. Make self-righteousness be still, and break our stupid rest. God will break our stupid rest. Soul, our true being, our true self, will break our stupid rest. Our stupid rest is our mesmerism. God will do it. and we just have to allow it. We have to surrender. It's a state of surrender. And it's funny, like all these Christian words come up, and you recognize, well, Christianity has a lot of this. They don't have the element of matter isn't real, but they have a lot of the elements of surrender and humility, and or at least in their teachings. That song, "Take My Life and Let It Be Consecrated, Lord, to Thee." I don't think that was a Christian Science hymn first. Take my life and let it be. It's the oldest hymn in the Baptist hymnal, like every Saturday. No, that. Francis Ridley Havergal. December was an English religious poet and hymn writer. "Take my life and let it be," and thy life for me, also known as "I gave my life for thee," are two of her best known hymns. So those were written during her lifetime, and she was not a Christian Scientist. She was pretty sure she wasn't. Her brother was a priest in the Church of England. Anyways, it's a Christian thing, and it's a letting go thing. It's a surrender thing that's kind of foreign to us in Christian Science, because we're all about pray, treat, affirm, deny. We're just trying with all the mental gyrations to have a healing, or to treat, or to teach each other that we're God's spiritual ideas. And but the concept of surrendering to the divine mind and God and just taking a back seat to it is not something I learned growing up. Although it's all over, like, "I look to thee in every need and never look in vain." That's another hymn. It's all over. The truth is all over. And I guess getting us to pray to God is a way, we're praying to God. That's a surrender to God. We have a hard time in Christian Science with, I know I've been around a lot of Christians who are like, well, it's God's decision, it's God's choice, it's God's, they have much of a greater ability to just recognize that God makes all the decisions. I mean, yeah, they're not obviously not perfect, but there's teachings there, just like there are here. But it seems like let God do it is like, I remember my teacher told us, let God do it. But he said, you actually have to do something. We don't just let God do it. And there's a lot of poo-pooing of those concepts, but God is doing the uncovering. God is doing the bringing, brings them to the surface. God gives us the experiences we need. God makes sure that we get the concept correct, that we understand where we've been believing we are the separate self. All we have to do is, take a back seat and listen and follow. Hymn 134 is from Samuel Longfellow, who's not a Christian Scientist. "I look to thee in every need, and never look in vain. I feel thy touch, eternal love, and all is well again. The thought of thee is mightier far than sin and pain and sorrow are." When I grew up and was born into Christian Science, the course correction of Christianity was lost on me. And I think it was lost on a lot of us. My parents were born into Christian Science. And, well, yeah, but their parents and their parents' parents found it. The parents' parents found it, and in the middle of my grandparents' life. So there's only 2 generations of us that were born into it. And I can tell you that the course correction on Christianity was lost on us. It's lost on me. It was lost on me. And it is one of the most important things to understand. And that a lot of what she's talking about are course corrections for Christians. But because we don't have the Christian teachings, a lot of times we're missing core teachings because everybody in her day were Christians. I mean, everything they did, everything they said, everywhere they went, Christian values, Christian ethics, Christian everything. Everyone had a Bible in their home. Everyone went to church, especially in England, New England, where she lived and was born in. So a lot of the Christian stuff I did have to go back and learn. But if that's part of what you have to learn, you'll be led that way. When you are unwound from an error, it is a freedom. Once the error comes to you, you wrestle with it and you realize, yeah, I was hornswoggled into this one. I'm going to let it go and I'm never going back. And once you gain your dominion of it after it's been brought to you, there's such a relief and such a healing feeling. And we're being denied. I was being denied that my whole life because our teachings were so focused on healing disease. And I think most of us were denied this true healing. Like, true healing comes through this process of self-examination, repentance, and an understanding of good. True healing does not come from a movement that only focuses on 1/3 of Christian Science, which is the understanding of good. And true healing is the best feeling in the world. It is freedom. And really, when you start this process, I think when I started it, I had no idea. And I kept saying, I'm willing to hear what I need to do and what I need to follow, how I need to follow. I'm willing and open. And yet the things that were coming to me were like, oh, that's probably not it. That's probably not it. That's probably not it. And it's because we're so mesmerized. So we're so caught in the dream. But you get better at it. And it becomes more and more of a wonderfully freeing experience. It's true freedom. On page 225 of Science and Health, line 23, legally, to abolish unpaid servitude in the United States was hard. We know that. But the abolition of mental slavery is a more difficult task. The despotic tendencies inherent in mortal mind, and always germinating in new forms of tyranny, must be rooted out through the action of the divine mind. Men and women of all climes and races are still in bondage to material sense, ignorant how to obtain their freedom. The rights of man were vindicated in a single section and on the lowest plane of human life, when African slavery was abolished in our land in the mortal dream. That was only prophetic of further steps towards the banishment of a worldwide slavery, found on higher planes of existence and under more subtle and depraving forms. That's all that's coming to me right now.